So, welcome to another episode of Paul's Asian Adventure. Hey, I wanted to cover a topic, and it's going to be called Four Reasons Why People Leave the Philippines and Four Reasons Why People Come to the Philippines. With that, let's get into it. So, obviously, the first reason people come to the Philippines are the women, the age gap relationships, the beauty of Filipinas, their femininity, most of them at least, their loyalty, their family values. Now, some of that has changed. Some women are becoming less feminine and more westernized due to feminism, but still, the majority are very feminine, and it's relatively easy to find a good woman here uh, compared to the West. As you know, dating in the West is a shit show, to say it mildly. So, dating here is fun. Dating here is good because, you're 55 years old, you're dating a 25-year-old. So, it's great. And people come here, like myself, and I've started or will be starting a family. As you know, Mia is pregnant. And so, for me, this is a great way to enjoy life. And these women actually want to be with you. They actually fall in love with you. I know online you'll see a lot about, oh, it's just a wallet for the woman, they don't care about you and all that, but that's not true. In my experience, a man who comes here and treats a woman good and, doesn't look like a damn hippo or something, but is in shape and takes care of himself and takes care of these women actually grow very fond of the man. So, and they fall in love with that man. This, I'm not BSing. But I've seen some horrible relationships as well. But it's all really up to you and the woman you find and how you vet them. So the opportunities in the Philippines are so much more vast than they are in the West. As we all know, the West is hopeless. So that is the first reason most Westerners come here. The second, of course, is the cost of living compared to living in the West, Europe, or living in the US. The cost is much cheaper here. For example, a nice two-bedroom apartment here would probably cost you about $400 to $500 in Dumaguete. Now, other places like Bacolod and other cities that are not full of expats are cheaper. So the cost of living, like I said, is cheap here. Going out to eat, you're probably looking at $6 to $10, depending where you eat per person. The food in the grocery store, as long as you're buying more local food, is relatively inexpensive. Actually, the prices there can be a bit higher, especially on some vegetables and some fruits compared to places like Thailand and maybe Spain and other places. But in essence, to live here, your budget is very low. You can live a good life here for about $1,500 to $2,000. And that might include a maid that comes in twice a week to clean up, someone who makes you food. If you have a live-in girlfriend, that kind of budget would be a good budget. And some travel. So, like I said, the first point is the women. The second point, of course, is the budget, how low cost it is to live here. So the third point are the people. The people in the Philippines, I find them to be very empathetic and very kind. And, they'll give you the shirt off their back to help you. I've heard stories of people walking somewhere and being invited into somebody's house who has a bamboo house for food, even though you can tell they're really poor, they're wanting to share. They are really good people, good-hearted, good people, Filipinos. And on top of that, of course, you don't have the language barrier as you have in many other places. So, typically, if you know a Filipino, you'll get invited to fiestas, you'll get invited to his family. They'll invite you everywhere. They're just really good people. They like to socialize. They love family. So it's a very good environment to live in. And the fourth point is, I would say, the chilled factor, I call it. When you come to the Philippines, you feel that you can relax. The stress kind of goes away. You don't have the stress levels you do in the West. One, because you're not working, but also because the pace of life is slower here, which can be very nice, especially if you're coming from a high stress job, and the relaxation, the easygoing, the slow pace really does help you enjoy life more. It also benefits you in more livable years. You get healthier, your stress levels go down, and so on. So it's a great place to live that way. So those are really, really good 4 points that people, when they come here, really appreciate. Now, there are, of course, some negatives. That is the way it is wherever you go. And I'm going to mention 4 negative points of living in the Philippines. And I would say the first one is actually, for me anyway, is a lack of variety when it comes to food. Now, that is improving, but when you go to the supermarket, at least here in Duma, Valencia, and even in Bacolod, you don't have the variety of food that, for example, you see in Thailand, I see in Europe, I see in the US. I just don't see it here. So, but you can make do with what there is, and you can order stuff online, so you can kind of get around that. So food is a big thing, and the restaurants also here, they're not. Some of them are good, but the problem is you can go to a restaurant one day, get really good food, go back next week and get some horrible food, even if you order the same thing. And that, I think, is because they don't have the same cook, or I'm not quite sure what it is, but the consistency factor here is not there. So that can be somewhat irritating. But like I said in one of my videos before, the thing about being in the Philippines, you have to have an acceptance attitude, that you have to accept it the way it is. And once you do that, it's all good. I'll give you an example. Today I was at Belcrease shopping for some stuff, and I was at the meat section, and this foreigner goes off on these steaks that have fat on them. Look how much fat there is on this steak. They're trying to sell me this for, the fat weighs something, and I just want the meat. And I just looked at him and I said, that's just the way it is. You can't get irritated of every little single thing. Your life here will be horrible. You just have to accept it. This is the way it is. You're not in government. You don't have any power. You don't have any way of changing things. So you either have to accept it or just say, to hell with it, and move out, man. Another thing that people will find here pretty quick, that the infrastructure is not very good. And when I say infrastructure, I'm not just talking about the roads. I'm also talking about the local transportation, like the buses, the boats, the ships that go from island to island. So it's really, most of it is kind of decrepit. Some of the buses are newer, but the seats are uncomfortable. They're not made for long distance, even though they're going long distance. As for example, I took a bus in Thailand. The seat felt like I was in a business class on an airplane. And here it's not like that. The seats are smaller, they're more uncomfortable. The buses, the roads are not straight. So there's a lot of turning, and all the time you'll see accidents with buses and people dying. So the infrastructure is just not there. If you're driving a motorbike, you have to be really careful over here. People tend to drive faster than they should, and I've seen a lot of accidents, both in real time, meaning I was there when it happened, and reading on the Dumaguete expat group, I'll see a lot of pictures of accidents. So that's a big minus here. Now, for example, I was in Bacolod. I didn't see any accidents when I was in Bacolod. I was just there for 90 days. But in 90 days in the Philippines, in Dumaguete, I typically have seen at least 2 or 3 accidents. So there are places that are better, Bacolod being one of them, of course. So the infrastructure is not good here. Is it getting better? I would say probably not, because the population is increasing. More people are buying cars, So these roads, some of these roads were really not made for cars, or not a lot of cars anyway, and people just stop on the side of the road and buy something, and the traffic backs up. It's just not, the infrastructure is just not very good here, at least where I live. Maybe it's better other places. The third point I would point out why some people leave is the healthcare is not very good here. It really isn't. And if you have any health issues, you probably shouldn't be here. Or if you anticipate that you'll have some health issues in the next few years, such as, if you're not in good shape, I would reconsider living in the Philippines, or maybe I would live in Manila, BGC, or something close to St. Luke's, which is a really good hospital. Now, I did mention one of the reasons people come here is the cost of living is cheaper than the West. However, having said that, the cost of living here has increased substantially compared to other southeastern countries, Southeast Asian countries. If you go to Thailand as an example, eating out is cheaper, buying food in the supermarket is cheaper. So everything, even the rents, I would say, in Thailand are cheaper. So your budget in Thailand would be cheaper. And Vietnam, from what I've heard, people have been there, and people who are there that I talk to now, is even cheaper than Thailand. So some people have actually left the Philippines due to the increase. They don't see the value proposition because of bad infrastructure, bad healthcare, and they're paying top dollar compared to other southeastern countries. So they have moved. Several people I know have moved to Thailand. Some have moved to Vietnam. I have like 3-4 buddies that have moved to Spain. So people always want to go where they get the best value for money. So some people have left the Philippines because they see better value in other countries. However, having said that, like I said, it's a lot cheaper here than living in the US or most Western countries. Another reason why some people leave is they feel lonely, actually, believe it or not. In a place like Dumaguete, it's kind of hard to feel lonely unless you want to be lonely or you're just a loner type of guy. But if you live out in the countryside because you have a girlfriend and you're living close to her family, you might start feeling lonely just due to the fact that really there's no other foreigners there, or the people around you don't speak very well. The English is not very good. Your girlfriend/wife might be spending a lot of time with her family, her friends, and you're just kind of left out. They're all speaking Basayan or Tagalog or Ilonggo or whatever language they're talking to. You have no clue what they're saying, so you can't be in on the conversation. So some people start feeling lonely that way, and they decide, they either move to another place in the Philippines with their girlfriend, wives, or they leave the Philippines and go somewhere else in Southeast Asia, or sometimes back to their home country. So some final thoughts. For those of you who are here and maybe have been here for a few years and thinking of leaving, and for those of you thinking of coming here, the Philippines is wonderful in many ways, and I think when we first come here, we're all, enthralled by the beauty of the Philippines, the beauty of the women here, the age gap dating, the cheap food, the cheap rents. But then maybe after a few years, people see other things that they didn't see in the beginning, such as, for example, something I really noticed lately is how much plastic there is on the beaches, on the roads, plastic bottles thrown. And it just, in the beginning, I didn't really notice it because I was enthralled by everything else. But now I started noticing it, and I always say you have to accept a country for what it is. I have to accept the Philippines for what it is. But I'll be honest with you, it does irritate me, and I think it irritates a lot of other people. And then maybe you go to a hospital for some simple procedure or something, and you notice how bad it is, and then you start thinking to yourself, really? Is it worth being here? Is it worth taking that risk? Or maybe you are driving and you're almost at an accident that kills you. And then your brain starts thinking through stuff that, like, is it worth being here? Are there better alternatives? And I think once you start that process, it doesn't take that long before you end up leaving, because especially if you have a significant other, like a nice Filipina girlfriend, wife, you can always take her to another East Asian country and live there and have the best of both worlds. You can have the beautiful girl, and you can have the good infrastructure, the good food, and so on, and at a much cheaper price, or at least a cheaper price. So, you know, many of my friends have actually left the Philippines. I have, 4 or 5 friends that have gone to Spain. I have 2 that have left for Thailand. I have 1 that's left for Vietnam. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some right now, but there's quite a considerable amount of people that I know that have left, and some that are talking about leaving. So I think it's like everything else. I think the Philippines is a wonderful place in many ways. And if I was a single guy living in the US or Europe for that matter, I would come here, especially if you're in good shape and you don't have any health issues. I would come here for sure and explore for a year or 2. And just keep in mind that there are other alternatives if you find some of the stuff, the negatives I've talked about, too much, or you can't accept it the way it is. Then there are alternatives such as Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, and so on. I've recently been in Thailand, and I found that I would say Thailand is like this. It's the quality of everything, and I'm talking infrastructure, healthcare, food, and so on, is equivalent or higher than the West at prices that are cheaper than the Philippines. So I think if you look at that value proposition, you understand why some people are leaving. Now, the big issue with both Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and Indonesia is the language, obviously. Philippines has a big advantage that you have the English language, which is just about everybody who's under 40 can speak English. So I think with that, I'm going to finish off this video, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions or any comments, please comment below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.